Hello there.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
How is everybody?
Pretty good.
Yay.
Cool. I wasn't sure if I could start it a little earlier or not since the Recreation Committee was ahead of us, but it looks like they ended as they were supposed to, which is great. So,
Yeah.
why don't we start? And Isaac, you're set for taking minutes. You have any questions before you jump in?
Like I just have a basic bare bones of like outline of the agenda. I can share my screen with you just to show you what I got.
Okay,
I just
cool.
plan on filling this in.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
All
And it
right.
doesn't have to be
Straightforward.
word for word, but particularly if there's a decision made, that should be recounted for the record. But
Okay.
Yeah, if there's a motion, you have to have who made the motion, who
Mhm.
seconds it, and
Okay.
then indicate there was a roll call vote.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
The general guidance is a reasonable person who didn't attend the meeting should be able to understand what we did. So,
Sounds good.
so you can work within those parameters.
All right.
And thank you again. And let's see. So I'll call the meeting to order at, let's see, 5:01. And thank you everybody for flex on the changing date, et cetera, et cetera. Glad that worked out. Um, so we have lots of discussion tonight. Sort of pent up discussion topics. So I am guessing there's no public comments because I don't see any public. Um, and we had three updates, CCA, stretch code, and MVP. I think the first two are going to be Nate. So Nate, do you have a preference? You want to do CCA first?
Sure.
Cool. You're on.
Super. So I sent a message out earlier today. You may or may not have had a chance to take a look at it. But where we had left things was I was going to reach out to Becky Torres and um, you know propose that we reach a decision on whether to issue a formal RFP or potentially the committee just might reach out directly to consultants that work in this space. I mentioned that ECAC doesn't really have a preference for an RFP or direct correspondence with. Um, there are three firms that offer these services, but that we would like to keep things moving. And, um, you know, I think we had suggested a date of November 17th, that if we had not heard anything back, that we would take that as a tacit approval to move forward. So, um, you know, we had edited the questions for the consultants at sort of live at a previous meeting. So I just composed this short note to accompany them. And seeing as the aggregation vote at town meeting was in June, I'm eager to send these out. So, I don't know if should I call up the text of that message if folks
Sure.
want to.
I mean, I think we probably want to have a vote to proceed. So looking at what we communicated is probably a good thing. And Jane,
Super.
I apologize for the delay in letting you in. I did notice it. So
Worries here. I'm going to call up a Word document that'll allow me to live edit it. This has got to be it.
it's just gotta be.
I've got a lot of stuff. I'm one of those people that has 40 tabs open at any given time. So how's that? Do people
Crash.
always teetering? Oh boy. Can folks see that?
Yes.
Let's see.
And you can enlarge on your own screen, folks, by going up to view options.
Yeah. So Nate, this is not the one you sent to Becky, right? This is
It is not. No.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
is the message that I'm proposing that we send separately to each of the three consultancy, energy consultants that
Right.
operate in the region. And what I'd sent out earlier today included the attachment. With is actually 20 questions, so we're playing 20 questions with these parties.
I also had made a thought about the questionnaire and the wording of a couple of questions. So maybe we can take a look at that.
Okay. Yeah, pull those up as well.
Tab number 73.
I think this looks fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your email looks fine as well.
Great. Yeah, it's the intent is to be short and sweet, and I have sort of archived dialogue with Colonial Power Group and I think Good Energy as well. But anyway, it'd be cinchy for me to send out a message to each of these groups, and I can CC ECAC, presumably would be the right protocol there.
It would be good for them to see that, yes.
Yep, on behalf, yeah. Okay, great. So I'll close that out. I'm going to bring up the CCA questions themselves. Great. Share that. See that. So Gail had a good question about this issue of Shutesbury's interest in avoiding.
Yeah, that was my comment as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's like some subtext.
Yeah. So my comment is whether maybe it would be more appropriate to ask a more general question about whether they would be able to give us information about the sources for renewables and if there's choices available, as opposed to because I guess I was thinking there might be some people who have particular issues about hydroelectric power or even wind installations. So rather than, kind of like talking about a particular type of energy source, maybe making it more general. What do you think of that? I think the issue is really about having information and choice about
the source,
about the sources, not specifically about solar siting, I think.
Well, I think it's both. It seems like it's both because we want to avoid them answering a question that doesn't help us. Like if you say a source, someone might say it's solar or hydro or wind, and that doesn't give any level of detail.
I guess we could say specific information as well as choices about the energy mix or sources.
I think it's a siting thing, which is generalizable. So in addition to the source, what kind of siting implications you design? I mean, it could be agrovoltaics, for example, which is not cutting down forests, but right. So some people are going to. So I think it's a source and siting question.
Yeah. I was thinking that I think we're agreeing. I think it's just doesn't even make sense to be specifically, and also the word about might avoid controversy. I don't know if I would frame it that way. I would really like to understand, we would like to understand what choices we would have and what information you can provide us. That's really the question, isn't it?
So I like that framing. What I'm trying to get at with this passage is the idea that a lot of the terms that we use in our discourse are, I think, poorly defined. So, for example, in our own committee's conversations about solar, people have talked about responsible solar or real community solar as opposed to some other version of community solar. And, I think that in order, we want to be in a position to be able to um, uh, explain to community members, what we mean, as we're not trying to sell the town on a particular uh, solar project, but, I think even with this idea of no clear cutting, the example that I would use is if there were a proposal for a 5-acre solar installation, that land was completely forested and they cut down all 5 acres worth of trees. I think everyone would agree that that is clear cutting of forest for solar. But even a small project might result in felling some trees. So what if there are 10 trees or 20 trees or a quarter of an acre or a third of an acre or half an acre?
The other issue, Nate, is that, when they're selling RECs, it may be for existing projects. It could be a project where, yes, maybe there was a forest, but it was felled 5 years ago. I think that, I wonder if we could just frame it that, with regard to renewables, there is going to be a question, the community may have questions about the specific siting. And you could say, for example, use this as an example that there may be questions about, forest site, siting in forest, rather than making that kind of like the only issue. Because I think that there could be other questions that people might have. We want to be able to answer all those questions.
Okay.
I think that's really what we're asking, right?
I agree. And my idea about how to respond to the issue of poorly defined concepts was to have the consultants tell us what they think they can, what they mean when they say certain things, so that we would be able to defend that decision to the town later on. That was my thinking. But I'm going to put on track changes and let's bang this out.
Yeah.
If that's all right.
Yeah, you got a comment?
I wonder if we could ask them if they could provide detailed information on sources and citing of the source of the energy that would be that they would provide. And then, for example, so let them tell us what they could tell us in detail, and in that, hopefully they could define what they mean by that, and instead of loading it with these heavy words beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just in support of that, the two things that strike me are, when we talked about this, we thought we were going to offer the town some choices, so saving money choice, don't save money, but have some be renewable, some version of solar, super solar, that kind of thing. So this question gets to sort of, I guess, two things. One is, what kind of options can they define and offer for us and be informed? And then the other thing that just popped in my head is, when you go and buy olive oil and it says produced, packaged in Italy, so you get a gazillion oil sources that are coming in to this one place in Italy and it's all smushed together. You don't know really where the source is.
Right.
And it's sort of, they might actually say, we can't give you that level of data because there's too many sources.
Yeah.
So like understanding what the products are and how they can, what kind of data they have access to is, I think, really helpful.
Right.
And I think just clarifying definitions of what they give us, right? So if they say, this super plus green renewable, what does that mean? Like, what does that entail? How can we package that for our community to understand?
Mhm.
Great.
We
I
want to
feel
know
like,
if you can provide the details.
Yeah.
yeah. Just as an aside, I feel like there should be a verb nowadays for watching people edit online. It didn't used to be a thing. Now you can watch people edit online.
But we know it's not AI.
No, yeah. Well, I don't know. Can we really tell that that's Nate?
There's a glitch in the matrix here.
Oh, yeah. I think this happened to me too. Here.
Is that the only question we have outstanding, or are there other ones that we would have to tackle?
Um,
We don't want to understand. We want to know
yeah.
whether it can be traced. That's good. Yeah. That would get to your point, Isaac, about a big mix of, I guess that was your point, Michael.
Oh,
Yeah,
by the way,
good. Yeah, that's good.
Isaac, welcome as a full member. This is your first official meeting, so congratulations and welcome.
Widge and I was sworn in last week.
All right.
You're now a full person. Okay, so we like what we got here now?
What does approaches refer to then?
Yeah, exactly. It was earlier a reference to um,
How could these sightings be defined in a bid?
Well, let's say sources and sightings.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
hmm,
Yep.
Great.
What doesn't it like?
It's Microsoft.
I'm going to save.
Ignore the squiggly red. It's perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So,
Sorry. I just my hope is that this will elicit a response that we can then develop an opinion, because I mean the objective really is to select a consultant, and so I think this sort of like tees things up for them. They'll know what we're talking about for sure.
But their response to this question will be very informative for our choice. Yeah, for our choosing. Yeah.
Great. Are there other edits that folks are interested in looking at, or questions?
Well done, you two.
I'm good. It's very comprehensive. So in the email that you're going to send, Nate, do you give instructions as to where to send their responses?
No. So it says it's looking for an affirmation of interest.
Will they just reply to your email?
Well,
I think so.
Yeah, what I was thinking is we should just be explicit and say, please respond to, and then give your email. Because I think just in terms of process,
Yeah.
better for you to send us their responses than from them to send it to us.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't a bid and it's not official, but nonetheless, it seems like we should control the communication flow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry for the Zoom bomb. We have a new, this is Toonie for the minutes.
How do you spell that?
Not yet sworn in though, right?
That's right. Can't vote.
He's a member of the public. He just wanted everybody to see his rear end and to stick it in my face.
Cool.
Lovely.
So in terms of the email and the document, I think we're all set.
Yep.
So we can go ahead and do that. And I think maybe Nate, when you send it out, just CC Becky so she's in the loop. And
Good call.
yeah.
And it'll be three messages.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then the other question I just had related to that, because in the minutes, I think this is the carryover, we talked about a presentation. So if we're assuming we want to, we don't, at this point, since we had the vote at last town meeting, we don't have to bring anything to a vote because it's all been approved. Now it's just selecting, we're starting that process of identifying someone who can then put forth something that we can then recommend to the select board. So we don't really need a presentation at this point. We just need to understand, correct?
Right.
Okay, cool. Okay, great. So we're on our way.
Great.
Thanks to all the heavy lifting of Nate. Thank you. And I think in terms of if there's, well, I think when you get the responses, you can just let us know, and then we can figure out how we want to. We should deliberate them in public meeting, but we can share them in advance once you get them.
Absolutely.
Cool. So
with the proviso that when we receive it, we do not comment.
Right.
It's just for our information. Then we wait for a public meeting to compare and contrast and judge.
Yeah. So you want to move over to stretch code?
I do. Yeah, I have some stretch code things to report.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was to reach out to Chris Mason again, with sort of a revised timeline for arranging a speaker, and Chris Mason responded that yes, he believes that they can schedule a presenter for the January to February timeframe, and he is sure that they can present with the perspectives that I had raised, and those perspectives were potential cost to townspeople of the opt-in specialized stretch code, and the fact that smaller towns might have a slightly different issue set than denser urban areas, right? So the fact that we don't have gas lines here, maybe they don't need to have a series of slides on the implications for gas hookups.
Nate, where's Chris out of?
So he's our green communities coordinator, regional coordinator. And so
he lives out here somewhere.
Yeah.
He told us last time. He's like Conway, Deerfield, something like that, I think.
Yeah. Over the past month, I also watched some of Amherst ECAC's meetings where the opt-in code was discussed. So they're further along than we are. I think they might have voted to implement. So I think they're dialed in now. But one of the takeaways that I gathered from watching them deliberate the opt-in code was that it might be good to have a proactive FAQ that addresses known concerns, probably suspected concerns as well. For example, one concern that Amherst received was around the potential impact of the opt-in code on housing costs, right? So will that raise the price of the average home in the town? And they had at their fingertips a study that they think would ease those concerns. So that's the kind of like homework that would probably be worth undertaking, like asking them what report they're referring to, for example, digging into that and having a well-referenced set of FAQ, much in the way that we did with municipal aggregation. Let's see what else. I did write James Hawkins, who is the building commissioner and program manager of the Franklin County Cooperative Inspection Program. He did not write back to me, but I was just making a general inquiry about, hey, do you have any opinions about the opt-in code? I know that there's a burden on inspectors to get training whenever there are new building codes released. That's just something that they have to respond to. But I think they would need to do that anyway, whether or not Shutesbury, votes to do the opt-in code. So that's what I learned about the opt-in code this month.
Well, thank you for doing that. So I guess the question is, what if I remember correctly, because it was months ago at this point, but what we talked about is doing a presentation in preparation for bringing this to town meeting. So it's my hunch is it'd be better to do in February, since we have a special town meeting in January.
Right.
Give people a breather between those two. And I think if we do that, then presumably we have enough time to bring it forward, because it's a simple warrant article. We don't have to write much. It's sort of like, will the town approve blah, blah, blah. It's mostly education. Does that sounds like that's rings true, Nate?
Yes.
And there's probably that language is probably out there already somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the due date for warrant applications? March something?
Oh.
May?
Well, it depends on what.
That's a question for town clerk. She'd know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they haven't, if we, who knows when town meeting will be? It'll be somewhere between the end of May and the end of June. It seems like it keeps moving.
Yeah.
But, as an example, I think, Miriam, next week on the 19th is when the select board's approving the warrant for the January 15th town meeting. So you figure roughly a month. I mean, you want to get it in the hopper earlier, but it doesn't actually get finalized. I mean, when I was on select board, we had at least 3 meetings where we would discuss what all the warrant articles are and where they fit and all that kind of stuff. So I think the more important thing is,
Michael, how long before the special town meeting does the warrant have to be closed? 2 weeks?
Grace told me officially it has to be closed on January 2nd, is what I remember.
Okay. So they're saying
yeah.
19th, but there's a little wiggle room.
Yeah, I think Grace, just given the holidays, I think Grace might be going away for a couple of days. So they wanted to make sure that there was, the select board can actually do it, and it has to get mailed out and all that kind of stuff. But so if we plan on a February presentation, I think we got enough time for town meeting. Clearly we can, I was thinking we can look at a date now, because we have to get Chris a date to put in his calendar, I would think. And then I guess the one thing, so for me, my hands are sort of full with solar bylaw and solar complaint stuff. Otherwise, I would volunteer to help with the FAQs. But does someone want to help Nate just sort of pull together the FAQs and think about what the preemptive question should be, so that it's not all on his shoulders?
Can't.
Okay.
I'm got my own full
No,
plate.
no. Yeah, no, you do too. Are you going to be after January 15th? You'll have nothing to do.
Nothing.
Yeah, right.
Well, why don't I see what I can drum up? I mean, there may be. I mean, I know with community choice aggregation, there's so much material out there, towns that have gone before us, that it was mostly just an issue of adapting, modifying things to the context. So
Okay,
Well, I'm happy to help Nate.
awesome.
great. Thank you, Isaac.
You're welcome.
Cool. So if we look, I was looking at the calendar in advance and I had a thought. So special town meeting is January 15th. And so I was going to suggest for our January meeting that we actually do it on the 23rd of January, because I don't think we want to do it the day after special town meeting. That seems like or on the same time. It's the 16th. So yeah, it would be, or if we did the third Tuesday of January, it'd be the same night as special town meeting. So that doesn't really work. So if we pushed it back to the 23rd, what I was thinking was that if we stuck to Tuesdays, maybe we could do the presentation on February 6th or 13th, and then have a meeting maybe on the 20th, so we can sort of process that and do whatever other regular work we wanted to do. Does that work?
So that a date again?
I was suggesting we do the presentation on either Tuesday the 6th or the 13th, and then we could have our regular meeting on the 20th, so we could sort of like debrief and just have a regular meeting.
February 6th or 13th?
Yeah.
February.
February, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. Isaac, what works for you?
February 6th or February 13th. Let me just take a look. And that's for the stretch code presentation, or is that for the?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we see when the select board would have a meeting so we don't compete with them?
That's the problem with the select board. They don't post. And Becky posts the Friday
It's
before the
probably
meeting.
every 2 weeks, but
it is every 2 weeks. You just have to guess based on
February.
So they're meeting on the 19th. So it could be that they're meeting on January 2nd. So the 16th, the 30th, they could be meeting on February 13th. But it's an educated guess.
So February 6th.
so we choose the 6th.
Well, February 6th, I have a meeting at 7 on February 6th. I have a meeting the first Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. Then the 13th, I am out of town.
Whoops.
Oh, me too, actually.
Oh,
Thank you, Isaac.
You're welcome.
30th of January, anyone?
January 30th looks good to me.
What, that's a Tuesday?
Uh-huh.
That'd be for the presentation, right?
Yeah. What's your sense of town dynamics? Do you think people will be done with big gatherings 2 weeks after the wetlands bylaw discussion, or?
Is there any reason why we couldn't?
Forever, you mean, Michael, or just for they need a breather?
Say what?
Is there any reason why we couldn't move it to February and March?
We could do
And have the presentation in March?
I think we could. It's mostly, I think, if we have town meeting in May and there's stuff we want to do, it's nice to have it in decent proximity so people, it's still on their minds and they still feel like they got educated, but we don't want to crunch ourselves either. We don't need a public hearing, which is good. So we could do it in March. We could also do it if we wanted to just sacrifice our regular meeting. We could do like February 20th, if that works for folks.
Yep. Works for me.
Okay. Isaac, Miriam, that work okay? Okay.
Here. Well, hold on here.
Okay.
I think so. That's the week of February vacation for
Ah,
school, and I don't think
that's
that we're traveling, but I'm not 100% sure yet.
But that's a good reason not to have it that way because other people
Yeah.
might be. Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly.
So the 27th?
Um, let's see. Um, yeah, we could do that.
All right, February 27th.
So it
We're still
depends
good
on
for
whether Chris is available that night.
okay. So
Well,
tentatively, we'll do it on February 27th.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
did
cool.
we want to give at least two date options to Chris so he has a little wiggle room? So February 27th and maybe something in March?
Good call.
Let's see, what's next week?
The next week is the first Tuesday of the month, so that's out for you.
Yeah, so maybe the
12th?
12th? Yeah.
Mm, if people feel like we're gonna, I mean, it feels like we probably have enough time. So I guess we could do that as a fallback. March 12th is the fallback.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. And that'll give us some time to sort of develop stuff and maybe not swamp you, Nate, in terms of the CCA and the stretch code at the same time. So cool. Okay. So in terms of MVP status, I do not know where it is. Maybe Gail, you gone to select board meetings. Did they bring, if they brought it up at all?
Bring up what?
The MVP grant. The last time I remember talking, I think you were there when we talked to the select board, and I told them that we didn't have a recommendation. Becky was gonna do some inquiry and figure something out, but I haven't tracked it. Oh, I gotta remember to tell you guys. Okay, sorry, just remembered something. So Gail, you haven't heard the select board talk about anything about MVP.
Stretching it. And the minutes aren't out yet, probably. Would it make sense that they would have stuck with the solar for the library?
Uh, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I mean, basically, for those guys who weren't there, I mean, I told them that we're in this sort of conundrum where we can't really get to square one because we don't have a consultant report that has the specifics and the cost estimates and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
both for MVP and for this Meta grant that I discovered a couple months ago. So I sort of left it to them to figure out. So we may or may not be applying for something, but I'm not feeling particularly optimistic
Yeah.
at this point. So I guess there's no status update since none of us know, but I haven't been following it. So why don't we shift gears? We're actually ahead of schedule, which is cool. Miriam, you wanted to talk about the impacts of stormwater? That was you, right?
Yeah, I always
Can you
do.
remember that far back?
Um, like an hour ago. I'm always
Yeah.
up for that.
I think when you and I talked, it was sort of framing it in terms of the context of climate stuff, but I forget the specifics. So I'm not sure what this particular spin on, because we've talked about stormwater in the past. Do you have clarity of what that
Well, I
was?
think this kind of segues into talking about the wetlands bylaw. But
Well, we
you
could do that because it's the
we
next
could
item on the
talk
agenda.
about, we could also talk about, I was just suggesting that we keep it on our agenda to be exploring the ways to make advisory opinion recommendations to the select board that might be not related just to the Concom stuff, because that, there are other things that the town could be looking at.
Well, I know, I think what it was, not to belabor it, we can move on to wetlands, but I think it was informed by the flooding this summer
Yeah.
and the fact that, that's, how to move that forward. I know I've sort of talked a little bit about it at the planning board. Miriam's talked about the design of driveways where if they feed straight into the roadway, you're going to create rapid water flow that is going to then feed into the actual road, create erosion, all that kind of stuff. There's things about curb cuts.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, there's the curb cut, which is in current zoning. And, you know, technically the way the curb cut is supposed to go is I believe that there's supposed to be some sort of review of wetland delineations, or the Concom is supposed to review curb cuts, but I've never reviewed a curb cut in the 3 years I've been on the commission. So it doesn't happen on a regular basis. You know, some communities, you know, have stormwater management bylaws, which are not, you know, not wetlands, not Concom bylaws, separate stormwater. Sometimes like with a board, or a board made up of representatives from different committees. So it could be planning board, could be highway department, could be Concom, that would look at, you know, projects from a stormwater perspective.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a recommendation. I mean, I think just thinking about how, given, you know, the changing climate, and as we saw, you know, flooding, stormwater and managing stormwater is important. So, you know, it's interesting to get away from just sort of the standing committee responsibilities and sort of reframe it as different stakeholders in town coming together, like you just said.
So I gave you guys a link to a website to look at called Climate Resilient something or other. And I really would like to encourage you guys to look at it, because this was a website that reflects a project that happened this year that was developed through MACC and DEP and the McGregor, Legere, and Stevens law firm and several other major statewide stakeholders. So it has a lot of very knowledgeable people weighed in on it. And they have different tabs for different kinds of municipal bylaws. So there's a whole section for wetlands protection bylaws, but then they have other types of town bylaws, including zoning and stormwater management, with recommendations for what will be the best approaches for stormwater management, because that's really kind of one of the impacts of climate change is, you know, increased flooding. And we certainly saw that this year. I did so many site visits this summer. I saw properties. I saw some properties that were really destroyed, like people's yards were just thousands of dollars of damage, literally, maybe even houses damaged. Really, really tough for some folks. So I'm not sure that a town bylaw would fix that, because some of those houses are built on hills and nothing's going to fix it. But you know, roads got washed out, some culverts had to be replaced, things like that.
Yeah. Miriam, why did you send that? I'm just looking at my email.
It was in the body of the email that I just got sent you. Didn't go through with
It's
the
4:55.
Yeah.
Oh, today.
And in the body, there's a link. It says climate resilience.
Yep, I got it. Okay. I was looking at something
you know,
historical.
It's a really good website. Lots of really interesting information about how it was also done in conjunction with MVP. It was an MVP grant. Really interesting educational materials. I think would be a good starting place.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, that was the whole point of that project, was to get a bunch of experts together to spell it out for towns and to do the homework.
Okay. So maybe we can all sort of review that, and then next meeting we can sort of come together. And Gail.
And the curb cut bylaw is old. So part of the inspection might be to read that against this context of amelioration, see how that would fit in, and propose either by the planning board or the highway department.
Hold on one sec. I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
Yeah, propose changes to that. Or if there is a tab on this for management, water management, see what that involves, and how we might group other bylaws under an umbrella.
That sounds like a great idea. Is everyone up for sort of reviewing it, and we can sort of regroup next month and be more educated? Okay, great. Thank you, Miriam.
No worries.
Okay, so wetlands bylaw. Um, the reason I ended up putting it on here, and then Miriam can correct me and give more information, but um, Miriam sent out a few weeks ago, then the most recent draft of the new wetlands bylaw. And in discussions, she was saying it would be good to have other committees who are impacted by wetlands and water related things
Mhm.
um, chime in and be supportive. Sort of like when you go to the look on the warrant article, it says select board recommends, FinCom recommends, that kind of
Right.
thing. Um, so we brought this up at the planning board meeting yesterday, and what at least in the planning board became apparent was the draft that is currently in play hasn't had a legal review, and the public hearing is next week. So at least for the planning
I do
board,
have an update on that.
okay, let me just finish my sentence then.
Yeah.
So in terms of the planning board, the general consensus was we were going to read it more closely. We'd have the legal review, and we'd have met as a planning board prior to town meeting, but after the printing of the warrant happened. So you wouldn't see it in print that, the planning board recommended, but we could vote for it and then speak to the floor. So I think there's different options. If ECAC wanted to support it, based on what Miriam sent out for us to review, maybe we have a comfort level supporting it as is. Maybe we want to sort of wait for the hearings and the legal review, whatever. But I think, well, we don't want to do anything. I mean, there's options, but I think just like we're talking about stormwater, having a wetlands bylaw, I think is relevant to our work. So we could have an opinion. But Miriam, why don't you give the update and then correct whatever I said?
Yeah, and could I just screen share something, Michael?
Sure.
Want to give me screen share privileges?
I think you can.
Okay. Yeah, the legal review is going to come in tomorrow, I'm told, but I'm told that generally speaking, it's positive and there's just some minor tweaks that are recommended, which is great. But whatever it needs to be. But I just so you guys don't have to be reading this, I thought I would just pull this out. So this is one of the documents I sent you where it's a comparison of the proposed new bylaw compared with the MACC model side by side, and it's color coded. So where the text is green, it's just borrowed verbatim from the MACC model, which is considered to be the gold standard statewide and has been vetted many times and approved by the Attorney General and is basically the framework for almost every wetlands bylaw in the state. So the text of the bottle bylaw is here, and then you can just look at the color, which is helpful. But MACC's model bylaw was published in 2006. And this last year, as I was mentioning, there was this new project with new updated language. And oh my God. Where you see in the column here in black, the text is black. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
But as you can see, what we're proposing is adding some purposes to the bylaw that have to do with climate change, including protection of biodiversity and mitigation of adverse effects from climate change. So this was from MACC's recommendations. So I just wanted to point that out because I don't think people always understand that in a lot of ways, wetlands protection bylaws are climate change bylaws, and they are stormwater bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
They are for protecting from damage from stormwater,
right.
To protect groundwater and surface water quality. So that is what these bylaws do.
And Miriam, just to clarify, with the climate change ones that you just pointed out, those are recommended by MACC.
They were recommended by MACC, and
they're just not in the model.
What?
They're just not in the 2006
no,
model.
These are new updates. These are new updates in 2023.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify.
So that's why the model was published in 2006. So, that's what, 17 years old. So, is that right?
It's been adopted by, he mentioned another town where it's already been adopted. These new provisions?
Well, a lot of this language was incorporated into a couple of new bylaws, and this year, and also in 2022, the city of Boston updated its wetlands. It isn't called a bylaw, it's called an ordinance, where they incorporated climate change, which of course makes a lot of sense for coastal areas in particular.
Yeah.
They're going to be underwater in 50 years. But you know, climate change has an impact for us as well. And you know, we're not going to necessarily be underwater, but we just saw this summer how, you know, these crazy amounts of rain have caused a lot of difficulty. And so, you know, by permitting projects to make sure that people are taking into account stormwater when they're adding, you know, impervious surfaces, or they're changing the grade, that's really important, because if you don't look at those things carefully, you know, not only could people's properties get destroyed, but their next door neighbors' properties could get destroyed as well.
Town roads.
Right, and town roads. So it's, you know, it serves everybody. It's not just about, you know, yeah, it serves everybody and protects everybody.
So I guess I have a question for the committee in terms of where people are in terms of what we want to do for a process. Like, you know, one could say, oh, I've reviewed this and it's close enough and I'm comfortable, we want to endorse it. Or we could say, we'd like to officially see the legal review, or we'd like the public hearing to happen. I don't think we'll meet between the public hearing, well, the public hearing and the printing of the warrant are pretty close together. So I think if we didn't do something tonight, we probably, and we wanted to support it, we would do it on town meeting floor. So we could figure out how to do that. But I just want to check in with people in terms of their comfort level, and as for the committee having a stance or not having a stance, and the timing related to that.
Are there any other questions I can answer also? You know, if there's any more information people need to make an informed decision. Should I take it off screen share?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
Gil.
I think I would like to take the stand of our committee being observer and not a supporter. For one thing, this would be the first, and it would set a precedent, and I'm not sure by what criteria we would ever come up with on support of like warrant articles, but I think that's a larger discussion. My guess is that it'll be recommended by the Concom, proposed by the Concom, and supported by the select board. And
I would hope the select board
maybe yes or not the planning board. So
right. Yeah. Nate, it looks like you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm kind of a pensive person, but I don't have in my head like a really good sense of sort of like what the norms are around committee interaction and building constituencies that way. But I definitely see the climate hook for a bylaw like this. So just in terms of comfort level, like I feel comfortable based on what Miriam just screen shared. It seemed very sensible and straightforward to me. But I also take Gail's point that sort of this particular committee has never like what's the where do we join in, right? There's a bunch of solar stuff going on in the planning board, but we don't have anything to say about that.
Well, we're making recommendations for votes at town meeting for like we're considering making recommendations for the stretch codes. So unless we're going to make the decision that we're never going to recommend anything to go before a town meeting, the decision that we're just not going to make those kind of.
No, but this is a question about supporting another proposal. It's not about our own proposal.
My sense is, rarely do other committees ask. You know, I mean, the FinCom chimes in on anything that's money. So they by definition have an opinion. And the select board often does as well. But I think other committees, I don't think people don't go out of their way to do it, but I don't think committees are asking other committees. So I don't see it as a bad precedent. I think it's a matter of us. I mean, me, it feels like if it's in our scope and this advances the scope of and the mission of the committee, and we think it makes sense, then it's reasonable to have a discussion about supporting it or not supporting it. If you know, someone said, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, the thing about our committee is it touches a lot of stuff. So I can imagine the recreation committee coming and asking us, or the highway department. I mean,
Yeah, then are we going to be asked to weigh in on everything? And then it gets
well, but that's not a bad idea. I mean, like I think it was last town meeting. I can't remember. Like I I objected to town meeting because one of the two town vehicles we were going to vote on, one was hybrid and one was not hybrid, and the fire department got all pissed off at me because I was, you know, I said we should wait. Um, and but if someone said from capital planning, you know, we want to spend the money and buy an electric vehicle, it would be reasonable for us to say we support that or not. Like, you know, we're basically sending the message that as a committee that's looking at energy and climate, we would back something like that, even if it's not our initiative. So it seems like this is a similar thing that we don't have to carry the water, but we can, if someone else is pushing something that would benefit our mission, I'm okay. I'm totally, because I think there's sort of a stamp of approval of like, oh, these folks care about energy and climate for the town and they're looking at it. What do they come down as? That's sort of what I've been thinking about.
That's your point in asking, isn't it, Miriam?
Which?
That we come on and support as winning people to your side.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll just say, and I'll say this in full transparency, you know, because I am coming here somewhat hat in hand. You know, I think we all understand that there was a process this year that a lot of people had strong feelings about around the Conservation Commission developing regulations. You know, a lot of people felt strongly one way or the other. But one of the things that we were all kind of united around, I think, was the idea that updating the bylaw made sense. And so we really are wanting this to be a unifying gesture and effort. And it is helpful if we could all, you know, put differences aside and look at for common cause of the things that we care about. So I know lots of town officials and members of different boards said, we really want to see a new bylaw, and we really want to see a new bylaw based on the MACC model. And so here we are with one. But I think that the public may be confused about, you know, which way to go, and hearing from different town boards, I think would be sending a message that, you know, this is something we're all can agree upon and that we think would be good for the town, which is kind of what everybody's been saying anyway. But to be able to say it at town meeting so that voters could hear from different town boards, I think that's helpful.
Here's a suggestion. Because when we were looking at dates for the presentation on the stretch code, we looked at February 27th and then March, but we didn't sort of nail down a January date. I think I had suggested the 23rd because it was after the special town meeting. We could meet the Tuesday before, which is the second Tuesday of the month, which I think works for folks, and just have a regular meeting, and then we could decide at that point. Well, it'll have cleared review, it'll have had a public hearing, we'll have a final version, and then, you know, we can have the conversation about, do we feel comfortable at this point in someone standing up and speaking for ECAC in support or not, and we can.
So this conversation will be carried over to the meeting on the 23rd. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, with more information, because we'll hear what people object to or not, and we'll have the legal review under our belt.
Yep.
So,
good idea.
Okay.
And in the meantime, that's fine. That's that's great. I just want to let you guys know that we're meeting this Thursday at 6 o'clock. And the first hour, we're going to be talking about the bylaw. So you're all welcome to come. And we're having a public hearing this coming Monday night at 6 o'clock. And you're welcome to come. You're welcome to send comments or ask questions, whatever you want.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for having this conversation. I think this is helpful. So we'll pick it up on January 9th when we meet. And by then we'll have more information.
What's the date, Michael?
January 9th. It's the second Tuesday.
Sounds good.
I thought you said the 23rd.
No.
No, I originally had pitched the 23rd, but what I was just saying is that if the 23rd is after town meeting, so if we wanted to have this conversation before town meeting, we would do it on the 9th.
Okay, so we're moving the meeting from the 23rd to the 9th?
That was my recommendation, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So
moving on to wind power options, which is Gail.
I need to step out. So I'm going to say goodnight to everybody and thank you.
Okay. So glad we have a quorum still.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in the April meeting of our April meeting, Nate had presented the findings from the past on the possibility or feasibility of wind power. And they were in the ensuing conversation and why it really wasn't a good idea or how it was not financially feasible. And the point was made that technology has changed a good deal since then. And would it be profitable to reinvestigate? Would it be a good idea to reinvestigate the possibility or the feasibility of wind power in town? So I took Nate up on that and started into the things that, well, there's a whole new thing out there called vertical axis wind turbines. And instead of these big propeller guys 100 feet in the air, these are blades shaped this way, and they go around the thing at about 30 feet. And so that's going to be a good thing. And they're booked as low speed wind. So what they mean by low speed wind was a question right off the bat. And it turns out that they require 6 miles per second wind. And so I wrote the two of these companies. It turns out it's one company. They have 2 different things on the market. And sent them our page of our research and then asked them what it would be like for them to come see our situation and give us some advice. And I got an answer back in like 20 minutes. The average wind speed in the state of Massachusetts, and particularly the heavily forested area, can't come anywhere near it. And you stop and think about it now, you look out your window. How often does the wind blow around here? Certainly not anything averaging. And he pointed out that the only place in Massachusetts where these are even to be thought of are on the Cape and out in the harbor in Nantucket. And he said it's not a surprise that where you find these is in the plains where they've got ongoing all the time wind. And what they are proposing actually is that these particular fixtures be added to those fields and fields of the 100-foot high guys so that you've got both levels. And one thing that's really nice about this arrangement is turbulence here, and you put a guy over 6 feet away, increases turbulence there, and you can get a whole ricochet effect at that speed level, at that ground level, which can be played out very nicely. And he talked about, how much this amplifies the effectiveness of all. But
they probably kill less birds as well.
But there is no question. I mean, this is why you don't see it anywhere around here. For one thing, heavily wooded areas, the ground speed is going to be zilch. Oh, okay. So Sorry,
So,
but that's,
so wind is still off the table then, it sounds like.
yep, yep.
But thank you for doing the research.
It was fun. I learned a lot, and it was some great photos out there of installations, and but big wide open spaces is what they want. Yeah. So
Interesting. Well, that's helpful.
I think some of that had been, I had been asked by a couple of people in town, please look into this, and they said, the neighbors' views have changed. It's not like as if it had hung up in the past because the neighbors were complaining about the sound or the visuals or whatever. That's not it. It's
It's good to have done the research and have answers. I think that's
it's
really
not a
great.
political, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Yep.
So Miriam said that she doesn't have her minutes finished, but she'll have them for next meeting. So that's the answer to that one.
Okay.
So we'll put it on for next meeting. And I think if we don't have anything else, we did pretty good. We had
But we have minutes from September 19th yet.
Oh, we do. Okay. Sorry. Nate, what did you want to say? Or is that what you wanted to say?
It wasn't about minutes. It was about pure procurement policy. If we have extra time.
Yeah. Well, let's do the minutes and then we'll jump into the procurement thing real quick. Let me just call up my minutes. Who took those minutes?
Nate?
Nate. Okay. And it was September what?
19th?
September 19th. Okay. So why don't I move to approve the minutes of September 19th, 2023. Someone want a second?
I would like to second.
Okay. Any discussion on those? Okay. And Isaac, you were not there for that one. So I just call the roll. So Gail.
Yes, aye.
Nate.
Aye.
And I'll say aye. And Isaac, you can abstain if you'd like to abstain.
Abstain.
Okay,
Nate,
cool.
would you send me the minutes as if they may or may not have been amended or
Yes.
edited, and I'll turn them in.
Okay, thank you. I will do that.
So procurement, a hot topic in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yeah. So, while I was enjoying Amherst ECAC meeting videos, the director of sustainability, who is Stephanie Cicerello.
Yeah, Ciccarello, I think such
yeah.
says it.
She mentioned a sustainable procurement policy. And it was interesting because she brought it up in the context of a failure of the policy. So the idea is that Amherst procurement default steers the town to replace end-of-life fossil fuel infrastructure with renewable alternatives. So they have this sort of like canned language. It's in their template, I guess, and it sort of drives the town in that direction. So, any town, we're making decisions all the time. Replacing a water heater, replacing stuff that breaks. And what the language does is it creates an assumption of a default to the non-fossil fuel alternative. And I can just really quickly just call up Stephanie's response to my query, because I wrote immediately. I was like, "Hey, what did you mean, by this? Is it published anywhere?" And it's not a policy per se; it's just template language. And I've highlighted the green bit. The gray bit is just the contextual motivation for it, but it just says that you got to replace fossil fuel systems with renewable alternatives. And what interested me was, there's no reference here to cost equivalence or And anything like that, it just says, you know, you really got to stop buying gas heaters and or like those kinds of decisions. And this would apply to, that electric vehicle conversation, right? It would just,
Yep.
That's the assumption. And then anybody who wants to deviate from that either has to ignore that or justify perhaps. But anyway, it's sort of, it gets to the root, the point of the decision. And I just wanted to put that in front of the committee and see if there's interest in suggesting this for our own procurement documents.
Well, I've got an idea, and it sort of comes back to what I remembered I want to just remind everybody, which is on January 2nd, we got invited to the FinCom. I don't know what time.
Oh, good. Yeah.
To speak about the town investing in some version of a climate revolving fund, and we can discuss how that would look. But I talked to AJ, who's the chair of the FinCom, and I talked to Rita about it a bunch of times. And so I think we're finally, they have enough brain space that they're willing to talk about it. if I can, we're being invited. So I think, Gail, you know this, but Nate and Isaac probably don't. What ends up happening, and apparently it started in November, is that the FinCom invites every committee or department that has a budget to come and make an argument, present the budget, make an argument for what they need. So school committee will show up, the fire department will show up, police department, et cetera, et cetera. And based on those conversations, the FinCom starts building the budget. So when I found out I figured they started in January, but the fact that it already started, I asked us to be included in that cycle of meetings. So it's not really our budget, but it's related. Hey, we lost Nate. Oh no. Hopefully he'll come back, because now we don't have a quorum. There he is. Cool.
Welcome back.
We were momentarily quorumless. So anyway, what I was thinking is maybe if I can pitch this, we can add this or insert this into discussion, because at those meetings, the FinCom and the select board are there. The only other body which would relevant would be the capital planning committee. But I think if we hit the select board and the FinCom, Becky will be there as well, and figure out and just sort of put it on their agenda. Because I think I don't know what form it takes. I mean, it could be, like a resolution, which doesn't really have any weight. But it's an interesting idea, and it really does get that stuff. Gail.
There is a procurement bylaw, and I just looked it up. It's a one paragraph, basically who's entitled to make contracts and stuff. So it doesn't touch this question. There is in some other bylaw, I know I've read something about waste or efficiency, and I'll have to go check that down. But if you want to avoid a bylaw, which has all kinds of procedural things, you might work toward a policy, right, which have to be approved by the select board, but it doesn't have the town vote thing.
Right, it's just the select board deciding.
Right.
So I think we could put it. I think we can. The reason I think it'd be interesting to raise it at that meeting is because, to Nate's point about the first objection, if someone was going to object, is that we're pushing people to potentially more expensive options.
Right.
And so, being that the finance committee is always having to look at the financial issues, having them at the beginning of that conversation is probably right, a wise idea. So if Nate, if you're good, I think what I'll do is I need to find out the time that we're on the agenda for January 2nd anyway. And I think when we get off this call, I'll just email AJ and read it and see if we can just float this idea as well. If they give us another 5-10 minutes or so. And if nothing else, even if they say no, we've already introduced the idea, we can go from there.
And use that language, or
yeah, I'll just
yeah.
Oh yeah, can you email me that?
I will forward to the whole committee that that exchange. Yeah.
Great, wonderful. Well, this was a good meeting, lots of discussion, and Isaac, thank you for taking minutes. Gail and Nate, thank you.
Eligible.
Hi, Jade. Do you have a question? You have a question? Go for it.
Jane, you're muted.
Oh, I can't. I wasn't sure if I could unmute myself. I thought maybe.
Yeah.
I just want to say thanks for having the meeting. I'm one of your just a regular citizen who's kind of interested. I wasn't quite sure what you all did. I feel like I remember when your committee was formed. And if it's okay, I mean, I might sit in a couple in the future. It was a little unclear to me because I don't do this all that often. And I certainly didn't want to stop the flow of the discussion and all that kind of stuff. But if I had a question, there are a few things I wasn't even quite sure what you were referring to. And I don't know if I could email you and find out, or if I can at some point. Yeah, I don't want to interrupt your meeting, but what's the protocol for regular citizens?
Oh, well, especially, it depends on the committee. The fact that we're a small committee and, it's more informal than some others. If you were on screen and you just raised your hand and waved it, we'd probably recognize you. So it'd be a contextual question. So do you have anything? It's probably easier for us to answer now because it's open meeting. So is there something that popped up that you wanted to find out about?
I mean, there were several things that was just interesting for me to listen in. And I am very interested in this presentation because I don't really understand what the opt-in stretch, what you were talking about. I figured I'd go to the presentation and find out.
You're not the only one, Jane.
Yeah.
Could you tell me that in a nutshell? But
that would be Nate doing it.
Yeah, I mean, every few years the state issues new building codes, and those are the standards for energy efficiency and probably structural integrity and other very important aspects of new construction or major renovations. And recently the building codes have really started to steer the state towards our objectives to be net zero in 2050. And so there are codes that we are automatically subject to each time they're updated, but there are sort of literally stretch codes stretching the reach of how energy efficient we can be that towns need to opt in to. So they would have to vote at town meeting to say, yes, we're committed to the climate goals, and our built environment is a really important part of that. So any new construction would be subject to this very high standard of energy efficiency if the town approved doing that. So there are a lot of really great resources that I'd be happy to forward to you just on the.
I think that even I was literally totally lost at that point, and that's at least a little bit of an explanation. I mean, I will say I'm kind of here. I represent a little group of people who are starting to educate ourselves about some of the solar issues around town. I don't know, Michael, I have tried to, reach out. So you know where I'm coming from, that, and I would probably let people in my little group know, but they're all residents, or most of them are residents of Shutesbury. So anyway, you get the word out, we'll all know that too. Although there are some folks from Amherst, from Pelham, from Montague, from Wendell, who we're all kind of working together and helping each other figure out what sort of the bigger picture is of some of these proposals that are hitting our towns. So
yeah, and something like both the aggregation and the stretch code, I'd say are less sexy approaches to energy efficiency. It's not the big bang stuff, but it's sort of like it's plodding ahead. So I think, and Nate's been really sort of leading in terms of investigating this stuff. So, it's sort of it's the structural approach, like just building it, weaving it into how we do business.
It's pretty interesting, actually. And I think, I mean, it was a town meeting. It was a town meeting back in June, right? That this committee was sort of formed. Because my sense was that
2 years.
2 years ago. Wow. Okay. I mean, my sense was that it was a very well-received idea. I mean, people really want this sort of thing, want to see this happen. So I know I do. So, okay. Well, thank you. Thanks. And this is, for me, all part of my education.
Thanks for coming, Jane.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Wonderful.
Okay. And I will say goodbye now.
Okay. So someone want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
In a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. So roll call out. Isaac. You just say aye, or do you approve adjourning? Okay. Nate.
Aye.
Gail.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we are adjourned. Gail, can I keep you on for 1 minute? I just have a website question for you. Is that okay? But we can
Thank you.
And
guys.
Isaac, one of the things we've done with the minute takers, once you get them put together, oops, you still there?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Send them around to members of the committee and
Email.
Yeah.
so, and the rule then is we can reply to you, but not to anybody else. So there's not discussion online.
Sure.
And you can take suggestions or not. It's up to you.
Sure.
And if you feel like you missed something, you can watch the video of our meeting that will appear on the town website. We have a YouTube channel. Check out what's here.
Okay.
All right.
Great. Thank you for doing it.
All right. Thanks.
See you guys.
Bye.
Oh, I lost Gail. So much for my question. Okay. See you, Isaac.
See you, Michael.